It is 1:30, so I'm going to call to order the meeting of this meeting of Policy and Governance Committee. Right. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nation communities across our vast regional district. Today, we are located on the Tecumseh to Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc. The TNRD truly appreciates the partnership we have with Tecumseh to Secwepemc and respects the territory and land on which we gather today to do the TNRD's work. Any additions or deletions for the agenda? Nope. Okey doke. I'm not going to call a motion. We're just going to keep going. Minutes and moved by Director Middleton, seconded by Director Thorpe. All those in favor? Thank you. I forgot to tell you, at 1:55, everybody's phone is going to go off for some test thing across the country. Pardon? No, it will. It will if you're on silent. It overrides silent as well. Every one of my alerts override silent. Okay, well, all I know is my phones are always on silent because I don't want to talk to people, and I get every alert bingo's off. And even when I know they're coming, I still jump. All right, we're moving on into the reports. First, the advocacy framework. Who's dealing with that? Would that be Corbin? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if the committee will remember that back in September, both frameworks that are presented to the committee today were for committee feedback. So the feedback that the committee provided back in September has been incorporated. Staff are now aligned with the process that both frameworks are setting out. And so we're just looking for the committee's recommendation for the board to adopt the frameworks more formally.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Director Middleton, seconded by Director Hall. Any questions, comments? Chair Roden.
All right. It's my obligatory editor's thing here. Sorry, everyone. Page 14 of this one, under number 3, orientation, education seminars and strategic planning sessions. I think it should be during the board strategic planning session at the outset of the term, not the onset. That's being extremely picky. Okay. I'm going after 2 letters. Pickiness, somewhat. Page 17, under set key priorities. Key priorities should be set based on the boards, should be board_S. And then in the next sentence, these priorities will direct staff and determine the meetings, plural, I believe, that will be requested at UBCM. And then on the final page of this, and don't worry, there's more for the next ones. Under conclusion, the intention of this framework is not to be prescriptive, nor is it to limit directors. Should be directors S' collective, not singular. Shouldn't look at Chair Bass when I do this.
Thank you for that. I stopped doing that because it makes me nuts. Okay, any other questions, comments, or corrections to the language being used? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried.
Yeah.
Oh, I got somebody online? No one told me. I'm sorry. Oh, hello. No one told me you were there, and I didn't look up there. I apologize. Welcome to the meeting. Dreading the next one with Chair Roden in the House. The Indigenous Relations Framework. Mr. Kelly? Might as well just go to her, right?
I was going to say, and you know, I did sit down with Chair Roden when I originally presented these to make sure that I had my my grammar correct. It's since gone out the window, apparently, upon implementing some of the feedback into these frameworks. But no, similarly with the Indigenous Relations Framework, just looking for the committee's approval to be adopted by the board.
Moved by Director Hall, seconded by Director Morris. Questions from Chair Roden?
All right. For those who don't know, in printing and publishing of any kind, there are gremlins that creep in after 18 people have proofread everything so that you go to look at it and you're wondering how that got there. So in that spirit, on page 23, the Thompson-Nicola Regional District is committed to growing and fostering strong and lasting government-to-government relationships. And then just a note that Indigenous needs to have a capital I throughout. There are several instances, particularly on page 24, where it has a small I, and I think for consistency's sake and also general style, we need to have it as capitalized throughout. So there were 4 instances on page 24. And it's easy to do. And then, so to stop being that nitpicky one, thank you very much for all the work on this. It really is helpful to see it spelled out and to have a very clear framework and map for where we are going and how we are dealing with the framework by which we are pursuing all these community to community relationships and the memorandums of understanding.
Thank you, Director Laird.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under the heading learning, one of the things that I was looking at and thinking about is we have very little, I guess, cultural part of the First Nations. Like in my area, there's actually some hieroglyphics that have been there for I don't know how many thousands of years. It's unprotected. It's actually behind the Quilchana Hotel, and anybody can go in there now. And I don't know, they can actually get right to the site. And I'm not sure, I haven't been there to see if it's getting impacted at all. And the other, there's 2 or 3 areas in my area that are spiritually important to the bands, and none of it's protected and as a site that should be kept for what they believe in with their spirituality and their basically their culture. And is there any way we can add something like that in there so that we can start talking to them and find out exactly what's important to them in all the different areas?
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair to Director Laird. Absolutely. I will say that these are always conversations that we have when we're through our introductory meetings and as we're drafting our more formal agreements with the communities. We're always wanting to make sure that we're being cognizant of cultural heritage protection. And I think in that case, there might be some questions as to who would actually be responsible for that, depending on where in their territory it is. If it's on Crown land, is it the responsibility of the provincial government then? And so I don't know that it's necessary to have it in this framework, because those are always conversations that we're having as we're engaging directly with First Nations communities. And I know it's been Director Thorpe has brought forward the idea of a cultural heritage protection policy as well. But again, because the TNRD spans 25 traditional and unceded territories of 25 First Nations, our concern is that if we get too specific at the onset, we can't have a cookie cutter approach for 25 agreements. So absolutely, I hear you, and that is a priority. And those are always discussions that we're having when we're drafting our agreements. Just the concern is that if we get too prescriptive at the onset, are we going to be hindering the work that we're actually able to do? Because that might impact the ability that we have to have a relationship with them if they see us as coming in and wanting to do something that maybe they don't recognize as being important.
Can we get clarification as if it is on Crown land and there is a site that we're specifically interested in, is there a way of finding out what the process would be if we went there? Like if we asked to have that particular area protected?
Yeah, so there is, and I'm going to blank on the name of it, but there's a number of databases that the province has that they list cultural heritage sites, and require, and in that case, it's when it comes to development, and how it needs to go to referral to different communities before development can go through, and cultural heritage monitors and so on. So there is some process from the province, but maybe if there's specific areas that you're referring to, maybe you and I can connect offline and just see if there's something that the province has in place, because I would be interested to know as well.
That would be
CEO
great. I'd
Hildebrand.
like to appreciate that. Thanks.
CEO Hildebrand.
Thank you, Chair Bass, and through to Director Laird. That database is something that we use on a regular basis through our planning team. So as development happens, we always check that database, and that database changes weekly with additional locations that are put on there that are culturally sensitive. So I know our planning team has access to that, and we can certainly make sure that we're using that as well.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just had one other question.
Okay.
I know the city of Merritt requires sign off on building permits or anything that is a changing the land. Are we having to do that at the TNRD? We don't need to get sign off on building permits within our area by the different bands?
I can take that one through Director Bass. We certainly have that process in place. There isn't an official sign off, but it's like if something were to come up that we find during the development phase, we would certainly communicate with them on that, and we've agreed to be proactive in that approach. But it's something that we're aware of, but there's not a sign off process.
At this time, it's not a requirement for issuing a permit. Okay, thank you.
Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping you can hear me.
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay. One of the things that I was wondering about that I've had a little bit of trouble with is getting notification or finding out what sort of events are being hosted by Indigenous governments in their areas that we can go to and support. We have quite a few we have quite a few Indigenous governments that surround us, but even if you pay attention to their websites, you're not always getting notified of what's happening in their communities, whether it's an open house or whatever it happens to be. It's just something I just wanted to mention. I don't know if that's applicable here, but I just wanted to mention that if there's an opportunity to kind of find out what is happening around us and support that where we can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Vice Chair Smith. Absolutely. I think that, there's been a number of instances where information might not necessarily have been, I don't want to say publicly available, but, it might not have been on their Facebook page or their website. But the TNRD was able to find out about it, and we share that information with the directors who are impacted or within their area. So an example would be swearing in ceremonies for new chiefs and councils. If we're able to, we'll always share that information with directors from that area. And so it's something that we keep on our radar, and we'll share out as we get it, but absolutely recognize that that's an important step to building relationships.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor?
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you, Zoomers. Carried. Moving along, we are at surplus and reserve management policies review. Who's got that? Go ahead.
So this one, I think it's come before the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee has had their chance to provide feedback. Hopefully this is in line with what everyone's expecting, and any questions, comments, or corrections, please let me know.
Any discussion? No. Chair Roden.
Thank you. Page 33. Here we go. Well, one very minor one. In the second paragraph under management of surplus funds, number 3, the very last line, to staff for the use of these surplus. We've got these twice. And then a larger question, and maybe I'm missing something. if you go down to number 4, we've got surplus administration, and it talks about a joint responsibility between the general manager, budget manager, and chief financial officer. 2 of those 3 positions are defined at the beginning of the policy. General manager is nowhere defined. And I'm wondering if we need to define it, and it's in the following policy as well, because there is no indication of who a general manager is.
Through the chair to Director Roden, I think that's a great point. That would be the general manager of operations currently filled by Jamie. But yes, I think that both of these policies should have a definition of what that is, and we'll add that in.
You got anything else? Just checking. Anyone else have any questions? I'm sorry. Anyone have any more questions or comments? If not, does somebody want to move this? Moved by Director, are you moving both or just one? I don't have a problem with you moving both at the same time. Thank you. Moved by Director Middleton. And seconded by Chair Roden. She beat you to it. All those in favor? Zoomers? Thank you. Carried. We might get out before the alerts. Asset management amendments. You again? Oh, way over to Amanda.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's a quick one. Largely, all the work on this has been done by NATO, our Manager of Strategic Business Services. Revision to the asset management policy, notations as per the report. So if there's any questions, let us know.
Thank you. Any questions? Anything from Chair Roden?
No, except that I did have a couple on the second one. Again, general manager, again, in the second of the 2 policies that we just moved. General manager again needs to be defined. And then I just wanted maybe some clarification on, I can go over this. It's just housekeeping. It's on page 42. And it's under reserve categories, operating reserve. Right at the top there. I think in the opening, the regional district will endeavor, the primary purpose of operating reserve funds is to, and then operating reserve fund usage, funds are permitted to be, it's very cluttered. It doesn't make sense. I think that the primary purpose of operating reserve funds is to can be deleted. And then under operating reserve funds usage, funds are permitted to be used to, and then 1, fund operating expenses, 2, fund additional expenditures, 3, be used for. It was very clunky, and I'm sorry, I do look at these things with an editor's eye and with an eye for clarity and ease of understanding. And then at the end of it, I had add XVIII, allow flexibility for grant matching new projects or unforeseen opportunities, just to have everything, maintain, allocate, allow for. If that doesn't make sense, I do have it scribbled down and I can show you my
Nope,
notes.
got it.
Okay.
Great feedback. Thank you.
I have a question though. Mr. Lewis, is that substantive enough that we can still vote? Do we need to send it back to get all that done? Because that's not 2 letters.
Thank you, Chair. That is, you're right, that's not 2 letters, but in some ways it's actually a smaller change than I think some of the ones that are made earlier is changing this. They say onset to outset is actually a change of meaning, even though it's only a very small letter change. Whereas in this case, I think Chair Roden has indeed entirely properly identified it's just grammatical cleaning up and there won't be any change of meaning. It'll just be making the language much clearer, much more direct. So if the committee is content that there isn't any change to what you voted on and approved a moment ago, then we should be good for Mr. Potts to bring that bring that policy as revised to the board with your endorsement.
Marvelous. I'm not going to ask her for anything else. Anyone else have any questions? Any of the Zoomers? Nope. Nope. Somebody want to move? Who are you pointing at? Oh. I didn't see your hand.
Thank you. I sort of did, but then I think as I read through it more, I was just a little curious on the asset management of our natural assets and sort of what all that encompassed, which I sort of see as examples or lists. And do we have any natural assets that we don't cover off in these sort of main functions, or is pretty much every natural asset we have attached with something that we operate, own? Do we have any like standalone natural assets?
So I can take that. Thank you for your question through the chair to Director Milton. So natural assets, they could be trees, forests, meadows, soils, lakes, swamps, so those kind of things. And specific to your question, do we own any natural assets? So in our parks, for example, we would own trees. And, in terms of providing that value to the community, when people go to the park, it is trees and the natural assets are something that is of value.
Yeah, and thanks. And I was just sort of, and as I was reading through, I was thinking, okay, I think I've got it all covered. I just didn't know if there was anything out there that might be more sort of not contained within some of our parks and trails and that sort of thing, but I think it's all there. So thanks for noting that I had my hand up, but I think I got an answer. Thanks.
Director Laird.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question around on the asset management plan. How are we starting that plan? Like, what would be our first asset management items that we would look at? Are we gonna have a plan and process that we go through water districts or fire departments, or how is the asset management plan gonna move forward?
Thank you for the question through the chair to Director Laird. So in our asset management strategy that we're bringing to the board on November 21st, through the roadmap as well too, is making recommendations that we're going to be dealing with asset management plans for our core assets. And currently our core assets are defined as like our water and wastewater services, as well as our recycling and solid waste and our facilities. So all of our buildings. So those would be the first, I guess, the asset management plans that we're going to be developing or updating. We currently have a first generation asset management plans for these, but we'll be updating these, we'd like to update these in the near future.
And one other question. I had a meeting with our local water district last week, and they have to do an asset management plan for their water system. They have to get an engineer to do that, and it's an $80,000 expense that the water district's expected to have done. True Engineering is a company that's basically put the cost forward to do an asset management plan. So when we get into asset management plans, it sounds like it could be a lot of financial or expenses incurred. And how do we look after that? Is that going to go, each plan would go to the board and they'd look at the plan and see what the costs are going to be, or is that how that's going to work?
So through the chair to Director Laird. So I believe there was a report to the board regarding a grant for a UBCM grant. That was probably a couple boards ago, and the board approved the matching of the grant for $25,000. So if we get funding for this, it would equal to $50,000. And that has been historically how much it would cost us to do our asset management plans in the past. So this is the number that we're going with as well. Some of the other water systems.
I'm just vibrating.
Safe by the bell there.
Risk.
Yeah. Yes, so through the grant, if we get that funding, we also have, the board has also approved, matching funds for that, for the 2025 budget. But also, we're looking for an asset management resource as well, on the November 21st board meeting. And with that asset management resource, we can do a lot of this kind of work in-house as well too.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Someone want to move this? Oh, hi. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to also address Director Laird as well. So if we were to go out and get consultants to do all this work for us, I think that's the example you're sharing. It's very expensive. To do it in-house with our own resource, I think is going to be what will be the most impactful for our organization, because we can do it now and well into the future and continue on with that process. And that was the reason why we're asking that tomorrow at the board meeting for that position that we talked about in budget.
Thank you.
Somebody want to move this? Moved by Chair Roden. Seconded by Director Morris. Any more questions? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I only hear one. I'm not hearing you, Director Smith. We're new business. Anyone have any? Thank you. Anyone have any new business? Okie dokie. Meeting is, what do you guys want?
Sorry, one last thing. I just wanted to thank everyone for this last minute policy meeting, because it was something we threw in there because we just needed to get a lot of this done before the end of the year. So we appreciate your time today. So thank you for that.
Anybody else? Marvelous. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
You too.